Jackson Gatlin of the Locked On Rockets podcast. Always great to talk to you. Big day around the league. NBA free agency kicks off, and a lot of deals being made. Probably the biggest one for the hometown Rockets. A 3-year, $130 million reported deal for Fred VanVleet from the Toronto Raptors. Initial thoughts on signing VanVleet by the Rockets.
So look, Daniel, this is exactly the type of signing that this Houston Rockets team desperately needed. Look, they are a young basketball team, one of the youngest, if not the youngest in the entire NBA. And when you look at what direction they want to go next season, they need a guy who can be an extension of Ime Udoka. Ime Udoka is a great signing, a great addition for the Rockets this offseason. And he is the leader that has been desperately missing in that Rockets locker room. But now they add a guy in Fred VanVleet who can be the extension of Ime Udoka on the floor for this Rockets team. Look, he's 29 years old. He is a proven winner. He is a former NBA champion, and he's going to be a guy that can help organize this young Rockets core on the basketball floor. He is going to elevate the play of every player on this roster, from Jalen Green to Alperen Sengun, Jabari Smith Jr., and even a guy like Amen Thompson, who hasn't even stepped foot on the court in a Rockets jersey yet, is going to be able to learn so much from such a high-caliber, championship-level point guard in Fred VanVleet. It might seem like an overpay on the surface, and I'm sure we'll probably dive into the logistics of the contract a little bit, but honestly, I think this was a great, fantastic signing for Houston.
It's obvious that they targeted VanVleet very early. They wanted to get this deal done. They threw a lot of money at him, and I think Ime Udoka had a lot to do with this.
He absolutely did, right? We saw for months, dating all the way back to December, the reports, the rumors, the interest in James Harden. And one thing that I would like to push back on is I've seen a lot of Rockets fans chalk it up to, oh, it was never going to happen. James was never going to come back to Houston. It was just a leverage play. That is absolutely not the case. There was interest on both sides of the aisle. The Rockets wanted to bring James Harden back, and James wanted to come back. But at some point along the line, there was a line drawn in the sand where the Rockets said, we are not going to overstep this threshold. We're not going to spend this much money or go this many years. And that's when both sides kind of had to reevaluate. And when you look at some of the reporting, when you look at some of the messaging, the conversations, all that, the James Harden rumors and interest really started to cool down around the time that the Rockets brought in Ime Udoka. And a lot of my understanding of the situation, at least, is that there was interest in reuniting with James Harden. Ultimately, it feels like Ime Udoka didn't necessarily want that for his vision of the team moving forward, and that's why they pivoted so abruptly to going away from wanting to bring back James Harden and then putting Fred VanVleet at the top of their priority list, and they got the guy that they wanted.
Well, I'm going to have to agree with Ime on that one. I was never a big fan of bringing James back. Now, one thing people are talking about, you alluded to it, is the contract. 3 years, reported $130 million. It's the first max contract offered and accepted during this free agency period. You know, on the surface, at first glance, that's a lot of money for a player like Fred VanVleet, who's a great player, no doubt. But $43 million is a lot. They have the cap space. They needed to spend it. What's your take on the overall money aspect of this?
Look, it's definitely a lot of cheddar cheese, right? It's kind of tough to stomach the idea of $130 million to Fred VanVleet, but this is ultimately what was going to happen. And I do think there is a little bit of concern here where the Rockets they were pretty transparent in their desire to get Fred VanVleet, right? So much so to the point that the Raptors got to a point where they were comfortable offering VanVleet that 4th year, and the Rockets basically, a lot of the messaging was that they wanted to prioritize 2-year-long deals. We knew that the 2-year max was going to be on the table for VanVleet, and ultimately they had to bump it to that 3rd-year max deal to be able to secure his services. I don't think it's the end of the world because, again, he's 29 years old. He'll be 32, or maybe not even 32 at the end of his contract. It might be 31. But he's not going to age like right away. It's not the same as bringing in, say, a 34-year-old James Harden on a 4-year, $200 million max. They're quite different circumstances. And because this was the Rockets' priority target and they didn't really have, unfortunately, I think, a backup plan if they didn't get VanVleet, then they kind of got to a point where they had to put that 3rd year on the table to make it happen. But ultimately, I see a lot of Rockets fans who are a little concerned about, oh, well, you just drafted Amin Thompson. He's supposed to be the point guard of the future. What do you do down the line when Amin Thompson is ready to start and you've still got VanVleet on the hook for a couple more years at max money? First off, having two starting quality NBA point guards, one of them with championship experience, is a very, very good problem to have in today's NBA, even on max money for Fred VanVleet. As the NBA salary cap continues to increase, as the new TV deal comes into place, and the salary cap continues to balloon, a year from now, 2 years from now, that max contract might not look nearly the same way that it does today as it does a year or two from now. And one more point to add to that, Daniel, is at some point, there might be the next distressed superstar who wants out of a bad situation. And when those types of moves are made, you need tradable salary to make that happen. And now the Rockets are going to have a very big trade chip in Fred VanVleet, to the point where if Amin Thompson is ready to take over the reins, even halfway through this next NBA season or a year from now, whenever that may be, then they'll have a pretty decent trade chip in VanVleet, either just because he's a good quality point guard or maybe because they use his salary as the buoy for a bigger trade. And even when you look at the basketball fit, VanVleet always made more sense to me than James Harden because he's a versatile player. He doesn't have one style of basketball that he can play. He's a guy who has played off the bench. He's played as a primary guy. He's played as a second or third fiddle guy. He can play with the ball in his hands and be your table setter on offense. He's a good shooter. He's coming off of the worst shooting year of his career, I think, or at least his career when he became a notable member of the Raptors, unfortunately. But he is usually a very high-quality three-point shooter, a guy that can space the floor, and easily somebody that you can envision playing alongside an Amin Thompson, because you can run Fred VanVleet at the point guard spot, and then Amin Thompson can check the other bigger players defensively, and it's a match made in heaven at that point.
Well, I like the idea of having a coach on the floor, especially with so many young guys. I like the signing. I think it's good, and let's see where the Rockets go from here. Hey, Jackson, thank you so much for joining me. Appreciate it as NBA free agency heats up.
Always a pleasure, Daniel. Thanks for having me.